everyone for the opportunity to hear from me, and we'll just go into it. Thank you so much. Thanks for that generous introduction also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oluseun Onigbinde. BudgIT, can you tell us a little bit about BudgIT, Nigeria Civic Organization? What do you do there? What's your focus? And how have things been thus far?
All right, thank you very much, sir. In 2011, over 11 years ago, a friend of mine and we set up an organization focused on transforming public data. We realized that public budgets, public financing can be very opaque, arcane, difficult to understand by citizens. And what we did was to take it from a complex perspective and make it much more simpler. So we started by designing infographics and sharing it to people, also by personalizing it to say, do you know how much your government spends on roads, schools, and hospitals? And over time, we've also built a reputation for being a research organization. So we do solutions like the State of State Index, where we compare the economic capabilities and the fiscal sustainability of states across different metrics. We also support state governments in research and analysis. Then after that, we do service delivery tracking. So if it's in the budget, our goal is to ensure that it happens. So if there's a road, a school, and hospital in the local community in the budget, we are working to ensure that those things are fully delivered. So in Nigeria, for example, we have presence in 32 out of 36 states in over 956 communities where we track public projects. And we do that with our project officers and also we call community champion. So in over 900 communities, we have community champions who live in those communities that track public projects for us. And we do that through one of our solutions known as Tracker. The third thing we work on and done over the years is extractive sector advocacy and reform. So a lot of conversation about analysis of the PIA or the PIB as it were before. We did things like that. We also work around social justice in oil producing community, more like tracking NDDC's performance, projects in oil producing communities. Finally, institutional support. So work with supporting the media, governments, civil society. We have an innovation lab in Lagos called Civic, where we also support emerging and young entrepreneurs on building new ideas that can transform governance. One of our partners has worked in getting over 900 people out of awaiting the trials. It's called Citizens Gavel. Developed also in giving justice to underserved people. So part of what we do in that space. We also recently we started working on health sector strengthening. So we're also working to transform experiences at primary healthcare center. The fundamental part of our work is accountability, that public resources are finite and there's a contestation around public resource between the narrow interest of politicians and the wide interest of the citizens. And we must be in the middle of that to ensure that public resources are accounted for and efficiently spent on the people. There's a team we have offices now in 5 African countries, and we have a team of around 70 people that are working there. Yeah, thanks so much.
Offices in 5 African countries.
Yeah, yes. So we are in Ghana, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Senegal, and Nigeria. They also have an office in the US also. Yeah.
Ghana, Sierra Leone, Liberia.
Ghana, Senegal, and Nigeria.
Ghana, Sierra Leone, Liberia,
Senegal, and Nigeria. Yeah.
You are doing a similar thing or there?
Yeah, so we started 2 years ago, most of them, but we focus more on budget access in those countries and service delivery. But Nigeria, we do broader work around policy advisory, policy support, policy analysis. But for those countries, we are focused on budgeting and tracking public projects in local communities. Yeah.
Yeah. So, are you income generating, or how do you get your funding?
So we're fully non-profit. Like 95% of our funding is non-profit. But the major funders support our work. It's a tireless job of fundraising, but we do that. But our major funder is Gates Foundation, Luminate, and I think, and Ford Foundation, and Open Society also.
That's fantastic. What has been your experience, or how were you able to get Gates Foundation to be interested in supporting you, or were they the ones who approached you to try and do this thing? And what was the motivation? What was the drive putting this together?
So motivation is that, I mean, growing up, I grew up in Ibadan, and my wish was to see a country that just works. I mean, that just works for the people. And I know that this is a country with significant resources, maybe not enough, but what we have is significant enough to make a huge dent in the livelihoods of Nigeria. So that's been on my motivation in creating BudgIT. And for Gates, and Gates started supporting us since 2017. I'm sure the other organizations have supported us much more than Gates. In the early stage, we were focused on data for them. So we all our work around state budgets, state fiscal analysis, state fiscal index. We have an annual program called the State of States, where we always do comparative analysis of states and in terms of their fiscal sustainability. So they've been backing that for years. Recently, we're focusing on primary healthcare work. So that's what we do for them. But they're a very conservative funder. Most of our funders are huge on our activism, our advocacy, and screaming at government, if you call it like that. I call it like sometimes survival of the noisiest. Yeah.
Survival of the noisiest. Yeah. What have you found in terms of budget? Do you do national budget also, or you focus more on the subnationals, the states? And what have you found? What is your experience? Are people budgeting right? And are people meeting budget targets? And what are citizens supposed to expect?
Yeah, so we start with federal budgets for years. So until recently is when 6 years ago, started diving deeply into state budgets. And I think we can take a little credit for how it's easy for Nigerians to access state budgets. I remember when we started, it was a state budget being accessible or being online was a difficult thing. And we put a whole lot of pressure. I mean, we got some support also from the World Bank to ensure that state governments put their budgets online and people are able to analyze, criticize, and engage on the basis of that. But the first thing I think, if there are few things I've seen about the budget, the first thing I see is that budgeting is closer to spending than planning. So whatever we call a budget is supposed to be at first a planning tool. It's not a spending tool. Technically, it just means that if I have a budget, I'm planning about these are my priorities. These are the things I need to do, and these are how I prioritize it. But it seems the way Nigeria budget is, we have to spend, and we just need to write what we need to spend into the budget. And that's why you hear billions and trillions in the budget, and somehow it just not harder because we are not putting spending on the kind of priorities that can be transformative for Nigeria. So Nigerian budget is very far from planning, and it's much more close just to about we need to just do procurement and we need just to spend. And that's something you would see evidently when you look at the Nigerian budget. The other thing about is also a budget that is distant from reality. So you look at the federal government, for example. The federal government in the last 5, 6, 7 years, the revenue has not been more than 5 trillion naira. But you still see a budget of 20 trillion naira in a budget of 18 trillion naira. And you're going to ask yourself, how do I have 5 trillion naira and I'm budgeting for 20 trillion naira? It just means that I'm planning to significantly borrow. And even if I can't borrow from the external market or domestic market, unusual, abnormal practice of getting CBN to fill that gap. And we have followed through. CBN has over 24 trillion has been provided for the CBN to the federal government by the CBN, which something which is a smart of fiscal irresponsibility. So there's the credibility of the budget credibility is something. The same thing you see in the state government. If I have some budgets could be ridiculous or ludicrous, if you allow me, like across River State government, which has like an IGR of 18 billion, but has a budget of 1 trillion naira. In some sort of way. So those are the things that you see. The budget credibility itself is not there. The third thing for me also that we've seen evidently is also measurement, which measuring impact of the budget. So it's more like we're spending, but are we really capturing the impact of what we're doing? It's more that we are trying to build schools. Is it changing the outcome of learning? It's more that we are trying to build hospitals. Does it improve quality of service delivery at hospitals? So also being able to see the budget, not just from we have to spend and we have to procure. We also have to be able to address the outcomes that comes out of that. And I think those are like the basic fundamentals for me in terms of how I feel the budget has not been optimized enough to levels. Yeah.
So I'm particularly interested in budget outcomes and the impact of the budget. You know, do you have a tool by which you can measure the impact of the budget and the budget outcomes thus far and so on and so forth? Have you been able to say that indeed the budget has been able to achieve the outcomes that it wanted to achieve?
I think that's the first problem, you know, in terms of looking at the budget. So we have a lot of analysis, and I can share maybe in the midst of the call to put links in there. Our website is BudgIT.org. So if anybody wants to see our website is called BudgIT.org.
You need to charge it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the reality is that we have a lot of tools to track and do a lot of reports analysis. But the first thing you say is that the budget, the way we write budget in Nigeria, and if one opens the budget, you see a long list of line items to be procured. You don't see a Ministry of Education say, I'm writing a budget and this is the outcome that we want to drive. Okay, I'm writing a budget and saying that as Ministry of Education, we're trying to reduce out of school children, we're trying to improve teacher training, we're trying to ensure that children transit from maybe primary to secondary school levels. We're trying to ensure completion rate of education. There is nobody that is setting agenda of the budget and is measuring around that angle. So you basically just see a budget and you see a specific of line items that maybe been procured by special interest. It doesn't just feel perfect or how a budgeting system should be, but you know, it is where we are. But we have significant analysis of health budget, education budget on our platforms, where we have been able to show how the budget is and what the impact is making or not making on Nigerians.
You are muted, Pastor.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. I think I don't know who muted me. Okay, so you were telling me about how you measure the impact of the budget, and I was asking you what tools.
Okay.
What tools you have.
So we have a tool, and I can share that link also, called tracker.ng. And when I was referring, I was talking about we do service delivery tracking. So it's not just about top line macro analysis of the budget. And that's the second link I have there, which is like tracking service delivery. So in almost over 900 communities, we have people who track public projects to ensure that it is being delivered. So, and we have over 40,000 reports on that platform of different communities. So if you search almost any community in Nigeria, you would see a project about the current status of projects, either a constituency project or either a federal government project that is meant to be delivered. So Tracker is the biggest component of our team. We have 32 project officers on the field. We have like 6 people who work on it in the HQ in Lagos. Then we always have what we call annual constituency project reports. We'll also share a link on that. So every year, we analyze constituency project and we're able to come together and say, this is the status of completion of constituency project. That those were started, not started, those were poorly completed, those were rightly done. And we've done a whole lot of engagement with people in government. A lot of people in government know about budget. They know that we're not that friendly, but we do our best to ensure that public resources must be accounted for. Yeah.
Okay, so you've mentioned 3 areas where you have issues: budget credibility, the CBN ways and means that has resulted in a hell of information and a hell of inflation, I beg your pardon, and the impact of the budget and so on and so forth. How, in your opinion, do you think we can get a lot more of the principal officers the leaders, the governor, the president, a bit more responsible in their budgeting process and have.
Yeah. So in my view, I mean, if you look at it properly, and if we situate this in the 2023 election, and a lot of people would have chosen the camp to pitch their tent in this election, but there's something fundamentally missing in Nigeria. That irrespective of how, until we be able to fix that, we might not be able to make a lot of advancement. And that is like the culture of accountability. And I always say to people that because you have a democracy or you run a democracy, which means by popular votes, electoral democracy, does not mean you're going to have accountable governance. Because accountable governance is supposed to be given in a democracy, but you can even see accountable governance even in an autocracy in some sort of way. In Nigeria, there is what I would call power asymmetry when we look at the public space. Now, there's a popular maxim by a political party that power belongs to people, and truly power belongs to people. The people of Nigeria actually hold the power. But in actual reality, when the people say no or no, do the people in public office hear them out and say, this is actually, we need to listen to you? So you see that power asymmetry exists, that even though power belongs to me, I'm not able to fully exercise it. And that's why even in respect of whoever we are put in public office, as long as there is no culture of service and there is no culture of accountability into how public resources are used, whatever outcome, whatever gains, whatever results we get will always be suboptimal. So in my head, I'm thinking clearly, if I'm going to choose a candidate for 2020, who is likely going to be accountable to me? Who is actually likely going to serve me? And I feel like that's one primary thing that has to be on the table, because we have, Nigeria earned around 9 trillion naira in oil and gas revenue in 2022. We spent more than half of that in servicing for subsidy. A chunk of all of that, or the rest of that, would be wasted into projects we don't need, contracts we don't need, and things that differently. There has to be someone that has to come and say, okay, this person is truly willing to serve me and will put service at the heart of what he wants to do. Because what we have seen is that a lot of public politicians, they serve themselves. So, changing the paradigm on that power asymmetry is something critical. And the only way we can do much more is that power does not belong to a person. Power belongs to people. So we need more voices. We need more people to speak up. We need church, and we need more unusual people to speak up. The church, and when I say unusual, because people always feel like it's only activists like Oluseun Onigbinde, Yemi Adamulekun, maybe Benga Sesson that has the obligation to speak up. No, we need everybody to speak up, because that is when legitimacy is strengthened and people will be able to say, okay, we need to give more heed to this. And we also need to pay attention into those who are doing intermediary work in terms of analyzing budget, analyzing public spaces, analyzing the issues, so that we have a much more informed position to be able to present our case. But the fundamental issue that I would say is that we have a challenge on 3 frameworks. One is that we have power asymmetry, which power that is supposed to be withheld by the people has been ceded into the public political elite. So the people do not have full agency, full capacity to exercise or to demand accountability. We have an elite problem, an elite challenge in Nigeria. So an elite that is not fully interested in perpetuating a culture of service. So it's more like an extractive elite. So you hear things like, it's my turn of my religion, turn of my tribe, it's turn of my people. And when you hear things like that, it's just about how much can I take for myself, how much can I take for my people. So also an elite that, it's able to fully prioritize service.
Elite what?
An elite consensus.
What did you call it?
An elite consensus towards service. Yeah. Okay. It's something that has to be there. And the other thing is to look at decentralization, or what people call restructuring. There is no way, because everybody, there's a graph that SBM Intelligence brought out and EIE yesterday shows that around interest in the election is around 42% when you compare that to the presidency at the governorship level. around 20% at the National Assembly level. There's this over centralization or concentration of interest in the presidential work, whereas Nigeria is a sum of its parts. Until we're able to build competitive states, accountable states, and structured states that are in a competition to deliver results for their people. That's when we are looking up and thinking some magic is going to happen at the federal level and will be a significant change, something I'm not saying. And my final point on that is also how the current system that we have only favors gradualism. And it comes around, if one even looks at the Constitution or anything, it's always about how much can we share, how much can we get to my people. And that's why one would see that in the last maybe 8 years, we might have made some gains in infrastructure, but what are our gains in education? What are our gains in health? What are our gains in security? What are our gains in the economy at large? So the Nigerian system as set up, only favors does not allow all the trains to run at once. It's only about a single sector, maybe carrying some form of gradualism, some appearance of gradualism, and not getting, and that's why people will look at and say, we need to, tear down the whole system. We need to entirely disinfect the whole system. And that also comes from us, the kind of elites that are ready to really disinfect and clear out the whole system. Because I personally have watched the system keenly, and I'm not too certain that we can make it out in a huge way this way. A last point is something that Dr. Sam Amadi mentioned when he spoke recently at Platform. And he calls it path dependence, and it's a theory, I think in sociology, around how a country or a people would possibly continue to turn in its way of history unless it gets a certain level of disruption. This is what I mean. Nigeria of today does not feel better than Nigeria of yesterday. The standard of living in 2023 is worse than what it was in 2013, in some sort of way. So there's a tendency, if we don't really, really arrest things and really do a cultural shift, that things just continue the same way, and not just continue the same way, but really degenerate. Because we have certain factors that are even militating against us. We have a population that is rising beyond our current growth rate, so our GDP per capita is falling. We have energy crisis in there, which means our biggest source of revenue, which is oil, is already even under threat because a lot of cutbacks, and even when we won't have oil prices right, we can't even get significant investment in the space anymore. Neither can we even fully take the oil because of the production problem. So those are the challenges even on the fiscal level that we are facing. But in my own view is that there has to be some form of reset. And this is not just being able to exchange personnel, it's just about that a cultural reset around prioritizing service and accountability has to happen. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think you've delved a little bit of the topic for today, the state of the nation and the implications for the 2023 elections. I'd like you to speak a bit more into that. But before you do that, I think my ask of you is this. You said some things about the elite consensus. You said that the average Nigerian seems unable. They don't have the full capacity to make their leaders accountable. You've talked about the lack of decentralization and making states workable. Why has Nigeria come to this? Why are we in this sort of situation? And if you like to expand a bit more on the state of our nation as we are today, and what are the implications for these 2023 elections? Why have we come to this such almost a hopeless state where you said that the average Nigerian has almost ceded his rights or her rights to the political elite? Why is this so? And why do we have this gradualization, you called it, or gradualism, of just wanting to share resource? How come the elite have failed us to some extent? They have this consensus of silence and so on and so forth. How did we get here?
Thanks so much, sir. And for me to first start is about how did we get into a situation of power asymmetry. First is that there's a bit of miseducation on the side of the citizens and on the side of the government. And that miseducation starts from that we've had prolonged years of military rule, and that culture of that military culture are also permeated into our democratic space. So you have that we are in a democracy where citizens hold power, where citizens are meant to hold power and challenge authorities. But we're also in a space where every set of powers that citizens hold is being pushed back at them. So, and because citizens do not have sufficient information, and I'm going to come to my second point, sufficient information to say, this is the situation. Even when they have the information, they lay it down at government and say, look at this, you did this, and there's an alternative cost of doing the other thing. There is no strength of response. You have people not saying, what is it going to look like? Because number one, we don't have a profile of citizens that are rightly educated. So education is a missing challenge in here, right civic education. To understand that within a democracy, you hold power and you must be able to question. And when you ask those questions, there must be answers. The motto for my organization is ask questions. You must be able to, in a state of mind, because that's what democracy gives us. I mean, the biggest infrastructure that Nigeria has done, even including like Third Mainland Bridge, was not built during a democratic government. So we cannot say that you need to have, it's not a prerequisite. Democracy is not a prerequisite for development. And because you have democracy does not mean you are going to get development. The fundamental part is that because I have democracy, I have a right to ask questions and demand accountability in an atmosphere that I would not be harassed and I will not be abused, and I can get answers from that. But the education, that civic education is bad. So if I had my first answers is there has to be some civic education on the side of citizens and on the government, that people must understand their right to ask questions and their right to receive answers as much as possible. And the same thing on that end, people get into public office and their shoulder pads get more higher. There's a feeling of arrogance. There's a feeling of I'm the Lord of Manor, and it's in some sort of way we can call it a babacracy, or a monarchy system that we didn't get out of that culture where the president is like a baba, or the governor is like a baba, whereas you are in office to serve the people. So that dimension of understanding of relation between power and between the people and has to change. The second thing is a social contract that is largely absent in our system. So, because, once one dimensions it, in terms of formal taxation, the number of people paying taxes in the entire country is not up to 10 million people, in some sort of way. So, there's some of silent arrangement has gone on that we will only drill oil, we would minimally not pay attention to formal tax. And I use the word formal taxation because Nigerians are taxed in different frameworks that are not formal, but we would only not pay extreme attention into taxation because, and that's why you look at Nigeria, our tax to GDP is around 4% to GDP, worse than even Syria or Afghanistan. We have a revenue GDP around 7 to 8%, just because we are a country that is not driven by taxation. If you look at the Nigerian budget, you hear oil revenue and non-oil revenue. You don't hear, and if you look at the South African budget, you see tax revenue and non-tax revenue, because there is a deliberate interest to build a social contract that I take from you, and because I take from you in a significant manner, I'm obliged, I'm under obligation to be responsible to you. And that responsibility of taxation is not something that an opaque system takes it, like the federal government. I take from even at the local county or the local level, and because of that, I'm responsible to you. So in a way, we have lost the social contract that is supposed to bind the citizens and the government together, where I'm putting in the government and I'm expecting that loosely exists. So we have for years and until recently, the dependence of government on extracting revenues, which I believe is held at gunpoint. It's putting like a gun to the head of Niger Delta, to say, let's take all your resources and use that to be able to socialize and distribute to Nigeria. Unlike when every component of the country is involved in productivity and a social contract exists in that framework. That for me is the second thing. The third thing that is missing is local governance, is how we have abused and how we have destroyed local governance. Nigeria calls itself the Federal Republic of Nigeria, but if you look at it structurally, it's not a federal republic. We could as well just call ourselves a Republic of Nigeria, because there is nothing federating significantly in terms of at every single level, there's a clear line of responsibility. Because we have disabused local governance, everybody now looks at the center, and a center that has too many mouths to feed, too many people to take care of. Even at the state level, I live in Lekki and Etios, and I always do a comparison that if you live in the US and you live in an expensive neighborhood, if you don't benefit anything in that neighborhood, you benefit that the quality of public schools in that neighborhood will be significantly better than any other neighborhood. And because you live in an expensive neighborhood, you're going to pay much more property taxes, and because you pay more property taxes to the local council, the property taxes is not going to the state council, it's going to the local government. And because you pay more property taxes to state local council is obliged to give you back quality education system. And that's why you see a lot of people who live in the US, they keep moving counties to counties and asking themselves, where do my children get quality public education systems? Now, if you revert back into Nigeria, the local council system has been abused and been destroyed. And so definitely there is no clear line of revenue or fiscal capabilities for the local council. Whatever even the local council is meant to get is being taken. So Nigerians, there is no affinity to a system. The governor is distant. The president is way, way distant. So in a system where you want to be much more accountable, your accountability should be much more, should be much more stronger at the local level. And even where it should be stronger at the local level, it is at that level that it is clearly really absent. So for me, I feel those are the three reasons why we have not been able to go forward and say local governance is missing, social contract hardly exists. And even when it exists, for example, someone like people pay payee, there is no clarity. And I tell people, if I pay payee now, I should be able to log into a system and generate a tax and print all my payee payments and say, hey, this is how much I've paid, and I'm asking questions. And if I ask those questions as a taxpayer, who is going to respond to me? And those are the questions. Being able to have those capabilities to be able to challenge the system. And the third one is a miseducation, where because I'm in public office, I'm the Lord and I'm in charge and I cannot be questioned. And I think those were things that we picked up from our culture that we now quietly morphed into a democratic system. A culture where it's like a Kabiesi kind of culture that we think is fully now fitted into a system. And that's a culture where the Supreme Court says A and the president will decide to do B, and people will not be able to challenge that because, we think we are in a democracy, but subtly it's more like a babacracy or I call like a monarchy system. Those are the challenges that we'll face, and until we be able to rebalance this system. That's why I said it's not about a 2023 thing. 2023 will come and go, and like we've seen with Yaradua, Jonathan, Buhari, a lot of people held like a gold standard. Whoever wins, we might still see the same attributes unless there is a culture that prioritizes accountability. We cannot spend public resource like it is, there's what they call the tragedy of commons, in economics, which means because it belongs to everybody, it belongs to nobody, in some sort of way. And so in a way, we cannot continue to spend public resources like as if it belongs to anybody and belongs to nobody. It has to come with a sense of duty, a sense of accountability, a sense of sobriety. And public office can't just be that outlet that somebody without any means or resource controls the level of public resource, and next thing he has a private jet, he has houses, he has lands, he has common means. That can't just be an answer. And because wherever we copy this democracy form, does not give it. Boris Johnson will not say because he was Prime Minister of Britain now, and suddenly now can start affording to be flying private jets up and down. The public are going to ask questions. How can you afford a private jet, Mr. Boris Johnson? Because we looked at your work history. There is no opportunity in that space for you to have a private jet. Or a Joe Biden, you cannot even lay claim to kind of what even maybe even a local, a National Assembly member in Nigeria would have. So that imbalance, that asymmetry is what constantly we have to find a way to balance back. And that will only happen if citizens are ready to ask the question in numbers and able to renegotiate the social contract in Nigeria. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much. I hear you, there might be a slide presentation you have for us. Maybe you want to quickly speak to that and then tell us what is the way out? What is the way out? And then also I'm going to ask you to give your own predictions of what the 2023 elections, who is going to win. So you have three questions. Number one is who is going to win the 2023 elections? Number two is what is the way out of this malady that we found ourselves in Nigeria, where government is just doing as it is, no social contract, no local government, no accountability. You even think that whoever wins the elections, the system will continue. So how can we get out of it? And then number three, your presentation for us. Thank you.
Okay. So I wanted to have a presentation, but I think I stopped in the tracks because when I looked at the run-off show, it was supposed to just be a question and answer. But I think more of the chunk I wanted to speak is on the levels of what is changing in Nigeria. I wanted to first look at the economy, majorly to say there were issues about what the current president, I'm saying previous, that's what I want to keep my phone silence. What the current president mentioned, and I think that's the issue of the economy. There was a time, 2012, 2013, where a significant chunk of Nigerians' revenue or expenditure profile was from oil. And you hear things around oil accounts for 70 to 80% of Nigerian revenue, and also maybe around 90% of Nigeria's exports. Well, the export numbers are still true, but the part of that is not true again is that oil still accounts for, oil does not account for that size of revenue. The idea, the myth that oil can service our expenditure profile as a country right now is no longer possible. Is no longer exist. So readily, if you look at us now, even though unfortunately we can't even produce 2 million barrels. Nigeria has been producing over 2 million barrels. And in fact, Nigeria produced 2.5 million barrels in the 70s. So somehow 40 years after that, we can't produce even 2 million barrels. So in a way, there is a big problem of the fact that we no longer, oil as a resource can no longer satisfy Nigerian expenditure profile. So conversations around taxation are going to come onto the table, in a significant way in years to come. Conversation around how do we even restructure productivity so that we can take enough resource from it. Because if you have more than 18 million people poor, I don't know how much taxes you can take from people that are already multidimensionally poor already by our own record. So in some sort of way, productivity is the next point for me that I wanted to talk about. Nigeria has to find a way to put its people to work and put its people to work from a global perspective. And I always do this small experiment whenever I shop for my kids in the US, and I look at the labels of their clothes, and I always see, and every year I have a chart of how this is changing. So I see made in Bangladesh now, made in Cambodia, and you still see the old ones made in Thailand, made in China, made in India, made in Malaysia. Now you begin to see made in Morocco, you begin to see made in Egypt. The dynamics has to change, that we have to be an economy that produces for the world. We have to be an economy that sells, because that's the only way we can re-engineer our focus, to be an export-driven economy. That's the only way we can even get our standardization right. Because if we are selling to the world, then our competitive levels will be much more higher. than whatever we think we could do much internally. So the productivity level, because putting people to work speaks to my third point here around security. There's a huge tendency that our GDP per capita will continue to decline. And because our population rates is outstripping our growth rate. So in a way where your population is growing, when your population is outstripping your GDP, the quality of life, the standard of living will likely decline. So if we are growing around 2.5% annually, and we can strongly get 2.3, 2.2%, that means we are not, the quality of life individually is not growing. So it's something that we need to come into the table with and ask hard questions, about the current growth rate of the country, about what do we do with the number of people we have. Anytime you walk through the streets, or you maybe go to some corners of this country and you see the chunk of young people, the question the one is going to ask is, what do we do with the sizable number of people? And that population issue is what people look at us and say by 2050, we'll be the third most populous country in the world, apart from China and from India. So that trend of population growth, which also even fueling urbanization. And I don't know if anybody's been paying attention to rapid urbanization. A lot of people moving from villages and towns and moving much more gradually into cities is something that would continue to, and those will continue to put pressure and pressure on the infrastructure within those cities itself, as much as possible. I think finally, is the quality of human capital investment. And a lot of people have mentioned is that we can build roads, we can build bridges, we can build separate and different things, but the quality of life for it to improve would have to come from if we are able to invest in people. And invest in people means giving them the right education, giving them right health. And that's why I don't believe we're a serious people. If in this modern knowledge economy, we would allow students to be on strike for 8 months, 1 year, and things like that. We want to participate in the modern economy, we have to be a knowledge economy. And it's about investing in people, investing in the right people. And investing in people will not be token stake. It will be roads, not be build roads into campuses, not what we give it solar energy. No, we will have to make sure that the quality, the outcome quality is solid enough. And those are like my output points. And I've set the framework to say previously to look about the dynamics of accountability, dynamics of lack of service and elite consensus and things like that. But if we want to change the paradigm, we need to think through our population. We need to look at migration to cities and urbanization. We definitely have to look at productivity. We will have to look at human capital investment as much as possible. And we also have to look about how does Nigeria sell something else to the world apart from oil. If the fundamental, which is my first point, if the fundamental is we think oil would solve our problem, oil can no longer solve our problem. In fact, there was an oil boom recently, and for the first time in our budget has been observing the space, Nigeria's currency did not appreciate. Nigeria's currency actually depreciated, which just even shows that no matter how much pennies we make from oil, it can't even fix the size of the quantum of our imports or the appetites that we have to deal with. And that takes me to the second question: what's our way out of this? For me, there are two ways. There's a way of where we are running it, which is, I believe is gradualist, it's slow, and which is we continue to elect the right leaders every 4 years, or we try as much as possible to pick the right options every 4 years. There is that pathway on which we say and do our best and coalesce and come together and hold them accountable. So there is a pathway from that place. And I think that's where we have to start with. If the quality of governance does not change, it's going to be really difficult. Because, and a lot of people say, go and vote, and we'll go and vote. But I believe that, voting is very important, but it's lowest power in the democratic space. And why do I say the lowest power in the democratic space? Voting is you being asked to choose what has been provided unto you in some sort of way. So it's not as if I say I go and vote and I'm offered 6.5 dozen, definitely I have to choose between 6.5 dozen, and I'm being challenged. That the fundamental is that we also have to find a way to build a new political elite that can transform things. We cannot we cannot wait till when we get to the ballot and when we now see that we are running short of options in that kind of dimension. So in as much as we get people to get out and vote, the elect paradigm for the country in terms of those who participate in the political processes has to change. And I will be honest with you, it's not as complex as a lot of politicians make it to be, because even the politicians, the only time they need either the political structures that they claim they have is during the election period. After the election is over, the same, you look at people that they call the structure in most of these places. It's not as if the quality of life is significantly different from those within the communities. It's just that some of them, they continuously buy their loyalties and things like that. We have to find a way to build a pipeline, an elite pipeline that is effective, that is able to influence the grassroots, to be able to sell our messaging. That's one thing. And two, be able to elect leaders. And three, be able to advance systems that can hold the entire environment accountable. If people believe that someone is watching, someone is questioning, someone is going to ask questions, then there's a tendency to be able to adapt and to be able to change behavior. If critical opinion is taken as a form of hate speech and things like that, then the challenge is that you have less people that are able to speak without fear or favor. We must find a way to build a new political elite. Those are the kind of ways that we can build a sustainable long pipeline. And two, we must find ways to also be able to change the paradigm by electing the right kind of leaders. Because by the time we build a new political elite, we elect the right kind of leaders, then we can also foster a culture of accountability. Even if we improve, have the right best kind of leader, without a sense of accountability in the system, we can't change. We can't change much. And that political elite has to be different. The orientation, their experience, the expectation, the ideas that they espouse would be different. There's a school that was set up by Mrs. Obiezekwesili called SPPG, School of Politics, Policy and Governance. I'm sure a few people here would have possibly attend. I would advise you to please attend if you are interested in politics, or even not, because there's an opportunity there to really, really understand and learn and create a new paradigm, so that in another 1-2 election cycles, we might be able to change things. I'm always of the opinion that there are no quick answers to Nigeria issues. A lot of people will say nice things during campaigns, but as they get into there, unless they have a culture to really fully serve and they exude that kind of culture. And I use the word culture specifically. I'm not talking about one person. I'm talking about us having a culture so that everybody around you, from top to bottom across, sees that we are here to serve the people. Until we're able to create a replacement system where the culture is not just about extraction, where it's more about service, is when we're able to change. It will take a while. That's why I tell people that want to do Nigeria is that Nigeria is a place where you must keep 2 thoughts in your head at the same time. We are very late, in terms of how we're going to want things to happen. And it's always going to take a lot of time before things can significantly change as much as we want it to be. Your final question, sir, is about what do I think of the 2023 election? Because of my position about how underwhelming whatever system we put there looks like, and how the political elite, and I know that there's a new candidate, Peter Obi, has gotten a lot of favor and interest with people. And I said to him, yeah, we want that. We want him to be aware of that. I like what he exudes and what he projects, but it's still going to work within that culture. It's still going to work within that extractive elite space. So I'm very circumspect, in terms of, even if he wins, my clear line of expectations. I feel when it comes to voting, I feel it's more of an emotional and a rational decision. And because I see that politicians, how do I explain this properly? People, when people have nothing to hold on to, let me just use it, they hold on to identity. And identity becomes a huge, significant factor in societies that have poor economic outcomes. And let me explain. for everybody in this call now, the agency to be able to make dispassionate and honest and critical analysis of things, irrespective of which tribe or which area or which environment the person comes from, is really, really high because of the education you have, because of the awareness you have, because of the kind of understanding you have. But I believe there is a significant amount of people, when they do not have that level of education or awareness, the only thing that seems appealing to them at that level is identity. And that identity could be tribe, it could be religion, it could be anything that it could even be a senatorial district, it could be my town, it could even be my family house. I always tell people, if someone says, oh, Oluseun Onigbinde is a stupid man, I might look away. But if someone starts saying, oh, Yoruba people are useless, I might prick a little bit, like, okay, what exactly are you trying to say? We are more tribal as an identity that we accept that we are. Or if I'm out of the country, and maybe I'm in one corner in Germany, and someone starts tongue lashing Nigerians, in there, even if I don't pay attention, and the person makes two statements about Nigerians, my awareness will be awoken. I'm like, oh, seriously? Is that what you're going to say about Nigerians and things like that? So identity is quick, and I think democracy has a way of reinforcing identity. That's where I'm finally going to learn. And I think we might not run away from that down in this election. It might be another election to reinforce identity, to say, and you hear things like Imilokan, or people that speak Yoruba will say, and which means my own, I cannot have a golden bead and put it around another child. It must be around my own child, in some sort of, and those were the sentiments you keep hearing at every different corner of the country. I think that will play subtle, huge tone, identity. And it's a false negative because if someone gets elected president now, maximum number of people, and we have analyzed this but the maximum number of people that the president will appoint is around 9,000 people. Let's approximate to 10,000 people. Because let's assume that we have over 700 agencies, and is going to appoint 10 people into the boards, and is going to appoint even heads of those boards. Let's say, assume, including ministers, let's say 9,000 people. Now, if you appoint 9,000 people in there, and let's assume that 9,000 people benefit 10 people each. Let's say each of 9,000 people benefit 10 people each. So definitely the total number of people that will benefit from government is around 90 to 100,000 people. So how is it likely that it's going to benefit me, even though I'm a Yoruba person? What's going to be, how am I sure I'm going to be among the 9,000? If I assume that because my tribe is there, I will benefit. But even though I make the analogy, it still feels good that people see identity as huge. So from my view, I feel any story that reinforces people's identity, will be a strong point in this election. And I think second thing is vote buying, which has become a huge, huge problem, and in discounting agency and polling ballot. Even I feel like the whole tension we are having now with this currency changing and redesigning is around curbing vote buying and making sure that people are able to offer their own ideas in there. And would that change? I think politicians will still find their way around it. If they have to transfer, they will transfer. If they have to, if they have to still be able to take new notes and being able to, shunt it and prioritize for themselves, they will. But in a way, and it just leads to about how we look at democracy, that it's a perfect system, but the exploited voter is the biggest weakness of a democratic system. Until we're able to have people who are coming to the level of awareness to dissect the issues and to rise above identity of tribe, race, and things like that won't change. I have my own small Excel sheet internally that I used to look at the race, especially at the presidential level. I have two outcomes if you ask me to predict. An outcome is a black swan of a Peter Obi having the highest number of votes. And I use black swan because it's going to be an unlikely event, the way I see it. Having the highest number of votes, but not having the highest number of having a number of reach, which means it might tend us to a rerun, for the top two candidates. So that's one outcome that I foresee if the chunk of people that are newly registered would truly believe in him come out in numbers, maybe that would be an outcome to see. The second outcome I see is another reason, is an outcome of where the traditional parties are running neck to neck, you know, in some sort, which is, I mean, APC and PDP, and Peter Obi gets not too distant a third, but a third that stays within range. But possibly you have the two main parties, and APC and PDP are still running neck to neck, because either we like it or not, Southwest people possibly would want to vote. If you look, it comes back to my theory in some significant numbers, South, South, Southeast, and looking heavily for PDP getting a little bit in there. North Central is a toss-up in between the main traditional party, Labour Party, Plateau, Benue, and someone like Atiku is significantly reinforcing a northern identity heavily. Maybe not directly, maybe not it means it, but those things are happening, especially in the Northwest and in the Northeast. So by the time you put the numbers and historical tendencies along all those lines, you see that, you know, a probable outcome is the two parties running it, so that whoever even wins might not win more than 1 million votes or even less than that, or a situation where Peter Obi actually blows all of us away and he has the highest number of votes. Why I say it might not have the reach is because his numbers in the Northwest and in the Northeast are not significant enough, in my own view, to be able to change. And those are heavy voting blocks as much as possible. But we would find out in another 9 days, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. We are going to be taking some questions from the floor for those who have questions for you right now. Sonny, I think Sonny should be on the platform. I don't know if he has any things to chip in, any questions for you. And then Jumoke too can chip in to see if she has any questions for you. Sonny, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Hi, Shun. Well done. Just to clarify, did you do anything on the manifestos of the parties?
Yeah. So we have an innovation arm in BudgIT, and it's called, and I'll put the link on the chat. It's called Civic, elections.civicarchive.org. So we can always check it. I'll put the link on the platform. And elections.civicarchive has the three main candidates. If I always say we follow the ANA polls, the three main candidates are based on the ANA poll, which is Peter Obi, Atiku, and Tinubu. We analyzed all their manifestos and we could always read them. You could see the profiling of each of the candidates on this platform. We also have an election data results portal coming up next week. So that's also something that is very, very possible. So elections is still civicarchive.org. You'll find candidate profiling, manifestos, analysis. You'll find even some analysis of issues, and you find an election map that we've created. We're going to create the one for 2023 for Senate, House of Rep, governorship, and president. And we're going to be able to provide that online. Thanks.
All right, thank you. The reason why I asked, and this will be my only question so that I can open it up for others to ask, it's looking at the manifesto. One of the candidates have always argued that the manifestos are similar and people just make promises, that it will boil down to who has the character, the will, the strength to change things. Okay, if that is the case, and you did allude to that a bit, okay, that we need to change. So what I want to ask is, in your view, what do you think needs to change in the system to allow for more accountability? So for example, somebody like Peter Obi, like you said, can come in now and he has that will to change and does things, but he only has 8 years. And we have seen it before. Obasanjo today is angry because he believes that many of the things he did in his 8 years were upturned by people that came after him. So what can we significantly do or change to institutionalize a change that we intend to perpetually see? Like Jerry Lawrence of Ghana would say that no matter who comes and sits on top of them in Ghana, he cannot do what he wants to do. He must necessarily do what the people want him to do. How can we have that kind of a posture in Nigeria?
So first is like I said, we have to first look at the president alone as our vehicle of reform. It's really unfortunate that, except maybe people in Otiosa will know that, okay, I vote in Lekki, so you have Banky W and possibly Ibrahim Obaniko running for House of Rep. I'm checking on the Senate race and say, okay, who's running from Senate? Wasiu Eleshinloko and somebody in PDP. I'm asking myself, who do I really want to vote for? I'm also looking at Labour Party candidates and the rest. But if you ask them in Nigeria, I choose my location. Who are the candidates in your location? Who are the candidates? Most people are only just fixated about the rigor, because Nigeria is a country that likes drama a lot. We're especially in the southern part of the country, we are no one big kind of people. We love the theatrics, the excitement,
But Sheon, just not to cut you, we have been involved in politics before, and what we often hear is that the president wields enormous power, that if we need to make any significant change, then we need that man at the top, that others will necessarily fall in line.
I don't believe in that. I think it's an argument that people say, oh, the president wields enormous. Yes, the president wields enormous power, but we have a situation where the president can have a will. If we don't have the National Assembly on board, a lot of things he wants to do would require legislative amendments.
Not for the 9,000 people that you say he appoints. All the board paratatas, those are the people that really run the economy.
Yeah, I'm coming to that, and I'm explaining that too. First, you have to have the quality of people at the National Assembly. It's critical. For you to make mountain some significant change, yes, you need to change that. The quality that you have at the state level, president is great, the president is good. But if we have a dumb ass at state level, we can't make it there. Then I will now go to the culture around the candidates. We must be honest with ourselves. The kind of because I said we must accept what is gradual and what is transformative. I don't believe that for us to say transformative, which means we are able to change the political elite culture. And that's not something we're doing in 1, 2, 3 cycles. So we will have to patiently build that up. But if we say we want to be able to move the envelope forward in a progressive manner, yes, we have to ask, what culture does this candidate represent? Does it represent corruption? Does it represent state capture? Does it represent opacity? Does it represent thuggery? Does it represent prudence? Does it represent accountability? What exactly does it represent? When we talk to him, is he going to be willing to listen to us? So those are the kind of culture. We have to dimension the culture around the candidates. If a candidate is nepotistic out of power, he will be nepotistic inside of power. If a candidate does not have capacity of certain issues out of power, he will misbehave inside power. I mean, people are showing newspaper clippings of currency being changed in 1984. It's the same person. He still wants to change currency in 2003 without maybe taking a view of the entire dimension. We know how the Nigerian system works. When the president speaks something, people just say, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. They just go and start even force feeding. That culture of what the president represents, we must properly dimension it. And also, we must also now have a long-term view of really building a replacement generation in terms of our political elite. It's a call of nature that a lot of people who are there today, in another 10 years, will be spun out of that cycle. The question is, who is going to replace them? Those are the questions that we must put on the table right now.
Thank you very much. I will allow Dumoke to take on the participants, and if she has a question to ask you, and then to call. I think we have some of the participants that have their hands up. They have questions for you. Jumoke.
Thank you, Pastor Sonny. Thank you, Mr. Sheon. I appreciate your time here. One question that I do have is on the social contract. We have a lot of good ideas. The process and implementation is usually the challenge for us. And can you speak more on this social contract as a means to help bring about accountability? How do we go about that? Because it's something that we've been talking about here at ALG as well. So please just take us through the breakdown of this social contract and the process and how it can be implemented. Thank you.
All right. I like the fact that you talk about social contract because it's like an unwritten rule, unwritten agreement between those who are the citizens and those who govern them. And it's more like I'm bound to do these things and you're bound to do these things against me. And I must be sure that you are not appropriating my resources or you're not abusing trust. And there's a major understanding. And the in between these things, what ties that contract together is what you call the rule of law. You understand what I mean? So if there's a contract, then definitely there's a legal system that binds them together. And I think fundamental plank that's been missing is that we have not been a country that prioritizes the rule of law. So if we want to have a social contract, I don't know how, because the first is that the government that wants to really build a social contract in Nigeria means that there will be rule of law. You steal public resources, you abuse public privilege, there will be consequences for it. That's the first thing. So in that situation, you build trust. Because average Nigeria, nobody anyway wants to pay taxes. But even now, even distill it to Nigeria, where you know that those taxes are likely funding a lifestyle of a politician, you just don't want to even do it at all, in some sort of way. In my own view, that rule of law has to be a fundamental plan. Then the second thing is that citizens also being willing to ask questions and being willing to participate. And those trigger points will happen soon. Why? Because oil revenues are not significant or not enough to really change the dynamics for Nigeria. Instead of Buhari acknowledging that environment, the Buhari government just went to CBN and just started taking money and spending as they liked. But a time is coming where we would even attack the credibility of the CBN if we continue in that fashion. And that is even has significant consequences for us as a people. But the major part is that oil revenues will no longer be. So people will come back to taxation. And when people come back to taxation, they must be willing to ask questions. And we must also not take it for granted that that's civic. Because look at Lagos, for example. Lagos is one of the places where, if you look at it, the payees is a huge chunk, or close to 60% of Lagos state revenue. But the people that pay payee in Lagos, how many times have they sat down and asked accountability questions around how the government is run, the resources they provide, or the quality of governance that they get? I don't think that's enough of that. So we must understand that, one, there must be rule of law. Two, there must be civic education on two parts, like I mentioned. The part of the citizen to understand their role, taxes, ask a right to ask questions. They're the part of the government that they also must be able to answer to those things. And those questions can't come from the regulars. It must come from everybody. It must be an orientation everybody has. And I think the third part is that when those questions are answered, there must be answers. And those answers must be significantly provided. So for me, building a social contract is a long journey, but it must be rooted in the fact that the rule of law must be there, that's what quietly can build trust with people. Yeah.
Thank you. I have one more question, and then I will open it up to the audience, to the participants. Let's talk about holding our leaders accountable and the role of the citizens in doing that. How do we call for maybe periodic town hall meetings or updates on where they are with the process and all the promises that they've made? Because it doesn't seem like that happens. So how can we develop a process like that, whether it's every year or every 6 months, where you start with your local government and then citizens or CSOs come together to organize town hall meetings and invite the elected official to these sessions to ask questions and really put them on the seat to get the information they need.
So I think that's a very great point. And I know Fashola did this thing of 100 days, 200 days, 300 days, even though some of those things get heavily politicized along the way. But I think it's something that has to happen. It can be a huge demand post-election, or even right now, that anybody who is elected, I think the National Assembly, part of the constitutional amendment is that the president must have like a State of the Nation address, something similar to what you have in the US with the State of the Union speech. the president must be able to state this is where we are as a people. And I think that also has to happen periodically. A public office holder must sit up and say, this is what it is for us as a people. This is how much we've earned. This is what we have spent. This is how we have demonstrated efficiency and accountability, and how much we are spending less on our spend and spending more on the people. Those are the kind of things. Also, and it's like I said, we need more voices, because I mean, for people like BudgIT, EIE, Yaga, Serap, who, yeah, they speak a lot, but the size of the voices are not enough. And so maybe post-election, whenever we find ourselves, we need to build a new coalition. The church must be there, the mosque must be there, the citizens must be there, the artisans must be, everybody must be there. That when it comes to public resources, it must be for accountability. So maybe this might be a chance for even an interfaith kind of council to come together and say, you know what, because that gives a lot of credibility and legitimacy. As a governor of a state, you know, you will come and account for how you have spent resources of the state and what you have been able to deliver with every 100 days. And everybody will be tuned to that. As a rep member or senate of the state, you come and give an account of what you have been doing, as much as maybe quietly like that, begin to change the culture and the paradigm of orientation. But I think it's something that we need a broad coalition to demand accountability. We can't have it narrow, and we have to do it from spaces that have huge amount of credibility. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And it will start with those leaders that are not compromised as well, because they could end up being the sellout when it comes to things like this. So thank you. We'll open it up to questions, and we have about 5 hands up now. And usually the way it goes is maybe we take 3 questions, we'll take 3 together, and then you answer those 3 questions because of time. So we'll start with Noyo Edem. She has a question. So please, we ask that you keep your questions to the point, short, and so that Mr. Sheung would be able to take a good note of it. Noyo, please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay.
Good morning, good evening all. Thank you for the information you have provided so far, Mr. Sheung. I think that's the name, Oluseun. My question from what you told us is that we do not seem to have a national identity. That's my understanding. But we have our ethnic identity, and identity is very powerful. It seems to be something that motivates us to do the things we do, even in voting, electing our leaders. So my question now is that what should we do to build a national identity? No, we have the different nations that make up Nigeria. But what's that thing that can motivate us to see ourselves as Nigerians? You give an example that perhaps maybe someone outside it, that you're saying things about Nigeria, you react to it because you identify yourself as a Nigerian. So we wonder how can we build that kind of consciousness in us?
Thank you.
We see ourselves as Nigerians.
Thank you. Go ahead, AAA. Your AAA. Please ask your question. If you could state your name and ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Ademola Dewa.
Okay, I think we lost him. Are you still here, Mr. Adewale? Okay. Yeah, you're muted. Oh, we can't hear you. Can you speak? Okay, I'm going to take the next person. Maybe he has issues with his network. Isiaka, go ahead and unmute yourself.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Onigbinde. I'm good to see you again. Sorry, my question is quick. There's one thing I've realized, at least comparing two legislatures now, the 9th Senate and the 8th one. So one thing we discovered was when the Saraki administration was in, we realized the posture of the legislature then was somehow that of a policy obstruction legislature, at least from the perspective of the ordinary citizens. And then there was proper check and balances in the sense that the legislature and the executive tend to be on two opposite directions. And now when the people actually thought the legislature should be the actual voice of the public, they've been much more silent, and the court is now doing the role in place of the legislature. So you, as a policy expert now, what kind of legislatures would you suggest is the best to measure legislative performance of legislatures? Is it the policy obstruction tab or those that try to go along and be in good terms with the executive? So thank you very much.
Thank you. Triple A, go ahead. I think you're back. Unmute yourself and ask your question. Triple A. Adewale, Mr. Adewale.
Okay, please, can you all hear me very well?
Yeah.
Yes, we can now.
Okay, thank you very much. I already posted my question in the chat, but my question is just towards Mr. Sheon. Are you pushing any bill at any level of government? Because you're a non-profit organization, you are doing a lot of work, but a lot of things you're doing can be ignored because you don't have that impact. So is there any way, are you pushing any bill towards government accountability, transparency, FOI? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sheon, do you want to take those three questions before we take the next set?
Yeah, I would take them and I'll be quick. One, how do we build a national identity? You're right, and I think that's really critical. I have this piece that I said that fractured societies don't scale. You know, if a society does not see itself as a whole, it's very, very difficult to even, because whatever we do, even if we say Southern Nigeria is prosperous, if we don't fix Northern Nigeria, it is still known as Nigeria in some sort of way. So either ways, we like it or not, we have to find a way to carry an identity. But the challenges are there. That we have to be honest. I'm a person that is talking about open conversation, which I think is the first thing you do in building national identity. There must be open conversation to fully dimension your cultures, your norms, your kind of people. Because I mean, the orientation of somebody possibly in Kebbi is not the same orientation of somebody in Imo or on Ibadan. Different orientation, maybe different perspective to religion, different perspective to life, different perspective to their expectations of government. The only thing that I think must be common is the value system, which is, I think, has eroded significantly. What value systems do we have as a Nigeria? And those value systems are always common. Values of service, accountability, integrity, honesty. So even if it's the guy in Kano, Kaduna, irrespective of wherever, he knows that the value systems that we have as a country must be, how do we build a country of common value system? Because if we think we're going to build an identity where Yoruba man will think like an Igbo man, or Igbo man will think like Yoruba man, I think that's like us. We had a time to do that, and I think we have missed that period. I mean, the post-Civil War was when we had a chance to really do the proper healing. And if you look at Singapore today, there are Malaysians, there are English, there are Chinese. I mean, they are from what they call Singapore today. But there was a deliberate interest, forceful hand of military to really emphasize Singaporean identity. So you might not even see that even today. But in Nigeria, it's going to be hard. You know, that's why a lot of people push conversation on restructuring and things like that to ensure that we're going to like a decentralized state. But what we have to firstly prioritize is how do we build, one, a common value system, two, a digital single database. I think that will also help us a bit. Not us having driver's license, voter's card, and passport, NIN, and different corners of data in different pockets, BVN. We have to be the national database, you know, where everybody is present, where everybody is fully accounted for at once. And I think gradually, if we build a common value system, we begin to see that we have so much in common. We begin to see that either whatever orientation I have as an Igbo man, we have someone, we are all looking for the same thing. But to really build a national identity, you know, it's going to be really hard to say we want to be like, we are all Nigerians, yes. And if we think deeply about it, we have been helped and supported by Nigerians across all places. But it's just that significantly, when it comes to issues that require us to come together as a people, we just leave all of that and we like allow our tribal identity or whatever identity to take forefront. And it also just feeds into the extraction agenda of the country. Everybody's in the race of, is Yoruba local? So Yoruba must benefit significantly at this point, or is Fulani local? And Fulani must benefit. And how much I can take for Fulani people, how much my own Fulani brothers can take, and things like that. It still fits in that culture of extraction instead of much more productivity. And if you read the Nigerian Constitution, it's more of sharing instead of producing. So let's set up a structure where we can have a common value system. And if we have a common value system and we see each other through that value prism, maybe gradually begin to see each other that we need more than another, and we share much more commonality than we think we actually do. The other part is the kind of legislature that we need. I don't think it's an either-or situation. The danger of Nigeria is that our democracy has not matured to a position of ideology. So you look at APC today, and look at PDP today. Maybe you might see some small differences, but there is no fundamental overruling ideology across board. So in the US now, you have Democrats, you have Republicans. You could easily say this on this position is where each person stands upon. In a political system like Nigeria, you have the president as an agenda. The president luckily has the majority of the National Assembly from his party. So what do you expect? You expect that the president will be able to bring his party member together into a conversation and negotiate and say my agenda. And everybody will come back because of the elite consensus, not because it's president agenda and how much can I pocket for my agency, for myself. I mean, if the president is creating this agency now, how many of my people can I be employed in that agency? The president is creating an agency. Which contract is going to come for that agency? I'm the oversight committee chairman. How much can I profit from that agency? Can I write into the budget? You know, if it comes from a position that the president wants to do this, and this is fundamentally agenda of our party, you see that everybody aligns with that conversation. And it comes back to what we had in the parliamentary system, where you hear things like the AG had a principle, a policy for free education. So either Awolowo was premier or Akintola was premier, the free education was just still there, you know. But now everybody looks like the president's one party and this one's another party. We must have a legislature that understands its independence, must also understand that it's also a vehicle for progress. And the legislature is created to be a speed break, to understand that the executive can be wayward. Look at this whole 24 trillion naira thing that we are grappling with now. How did we print up to 24 trillion naira and the National Assembly were quiet? And you're now living in the last minute and you now want to securitize that and now formalize that. It's because we have people who do not think within the prism of service and accountability. So it's just about, I'm filling the space, and it's all about benefit, how much communal benefit I can get. How much roads can I build in Surulere? You know, how much land, you know, and those are the kind of conversations that we bring to the table. And that's what you see a speaker running up and down. Speaker that's supposed to be the critical voice. I mean, the Speaker of the United States will be a critical voice for policy, but no, the critical in Nigeria is how much constituency project can I put in the budget so I can build roads in Surulere? And at the end of the day, you damage the whole country just because you're trying to appropriate opportunity for yourself. Those are the kind of questions that we are missing as much as possible as a people. So for me, it's a and/or situation. We must have legislature that understands independence and also understands that there's a common ideology that we have to progress on. Third is about, is there any bill that we are doing at the government level? We've tried it before. We even tried this constitutional amendment. It's been difficult to get anybody in National Assembly to sponsor a bill. And one of the things we were trying to do was to mandate states constitutionally to present, to prepare their budgets and to publish it. Because whatever program we were doing with the World Bank to make that happen has closed. So we don't know if the state governments are going to be incentivized. They were giving them money. There's a program called SIFTAS, where state governments got money from the World Bank to publish data and do things. So, but we were planning that we'll put more noise and more effort in the next constitutional amendment. But reality is that there are enough tools currently, to change dynamics. If anybody thinks Petroleum Industry Act is going to change the NPC, from being a moribund state-owned infrastructure now, laws hardly change spaces. There's a culture that needs to have a refix. But we will try and use that. Laws can also be helpful in resetting culture and incentivizing things. So we will think in the next constitutional amendment, we'll see how much we can pass and we can push. But we need people who are progressive-minded legislators to do this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So the next 3 sets of questions, and then we'll take a couple from the YouTube channel. Prince Akinwale Ojomo, please go ahead and ask your question. And if we can keep it also brief, appreciate.
Thank you so much, Jumoke. My name is Akinwale Ojomo. I'm in Europe right now. I run the Diaspora Innovation Institute. Good stuff, Sheung. I think watching you from afar. I think this is an opportunity to work together. And thank you for the leadership at AL organization as well. So my question is this, of course, I'm diaspora, so I'm going to talk about diaspora voting, right? Diaspora voting actually, Atlanta didn't happen. And of course, I was furious. So, but of course, it's our mistake because we are not actually creating a platform. So my question is this, or opportunity is this, how can we work together to create a lobby group using technology? Because that's what we are known for right now. So be able to really make this thing happen, right? That's number one. Then number two, quick, is that do you have a current program or system in place to track votes by National Assembly members? So for instance, I want to know if, I'm from Ondo State, for instance, I want to know if my National Assembly member actually voted against or for the diaspora voting, So again, this kind of the systemic way of saying, oh, then I need to vote for him, right? Because he's supporting me, or I don't have to vote for him because he does not support my own agenda. So that's number two. Number three, quickly, is that are those bills online, like the National Assembly bills, are they online? I'm sorry if I'm ignorant here, but again, I didn't know, or some of us didn't know, we are supposed to be diaspora leaders. We're not even aware that the bill is going into the session in the National Assembly. What we did know was when it was not really passed. So just a quick question. Again, thank you. Good stuff you're doing, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Samuel Dada, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, I think I agree to all your submissions, almost 99%, till the moment people started asking questions. Because I remember when Pastor Enebi was asking you that what we learned is that most of our presidents has the power, to do that which they intend to do for the country. You were saying that no, not truly like that. But your last submission to a particular person, you now said mostly every president has the majority in the parliament. Then I asked myself, what is the problem with the president if he cannot execute that agenda, if truly he has the majority? Because right from the days of Obasanjo, it was true that they have the majority. So what is the problem that Baba Obasanjo cannot even give us a biometric data of all Nigerians to have a forensic where we can know who is who in Nigeria? So I don't really understand. Now, I want to ask you, you are your own doing this as an activist, like you said. Are you worried that in the next 10 years, if things are going the way it's going, we may be in a condition where everybody will have to run out of the country, especially the educated elite? Because when you were talking about the information that people need to get information, I think most of our, because we term some people as educated elites, not political elite, that people, most of us that are here, that we know about how things supposed to be, that we are not working in synergy, doing things together. Are you worried that you need to do better than what you're doing? Because I can see from your statement that you are aligned to Labour Party, because you mostly condemn the APC and PDP, which I agree with. But the Labour Party as well, I am not in accordance with most things they are doing, because Anna Pool has an aircraft which they were using to be taking Obi around. These are the things, these are fraud as well. And this guy is being packaged for us by the political elite like Donyo Okupe. And if he comes there too, we will not be able to do anything like you said. So how do you think we can work on this? Because Nigeria is going to a state where everybody will have to run out of that country, and I'm scared. So what do you think about these things? Are you worried in working with synergy with a new political party that is not grounded by the political stalwarts that we have today, that they are mostly corrupt? So what do you think about that? If you are thinking in going into politics in future, or working with some other people to build a new political party that has the culture of accountability, of information management. So I want to know if you are thinking in this direction. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you. BC, please go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, BC Showme. Thank you very much. I really commend Mr. Onigbinde for all that he's doing. It's very, very rare to find people who are patriotic and committed and really who are bent on working for the good of the average citizen. So I want to thank you and wish you more and more success, but you need to publicize what you are doing more, because I wasn't aware of anything you were doing until this program. That's the number one. Number two, you've made so many fundamental points, and others have too. But I want to ask some practical questions. You've been saying questions must be asked, questions must be asked. If we do ask those questions and answers are not given, what do we do? Like the co-moderator was saying, what do you do to ensure you have town hall meetings and call these politicians to just put them on the carpet? How do we get answers to those questions we are asking? Secondly, how do we achieve civic education? You know, Aisha Yusuf used to say the most powerful office is the office of the citizen. How do we get people to realize that they really have the power to educate them and they must have a say? Those people in the assembly are to represent them. They are not to carry out their own agenda. So how do we get that civic education? Thirdly, the process of removing a representative that is not performing is so tortuous that in fact it fails before going on. How do we effect a change so that it's easier to remove legislators who are not performing? Because that will put the others on their toes. And finally, there's the issue of police and security brutality. I think in the recent, maybe just 2 days ago, there was peaceful demonstration in a town and police carried live bullet, and I understand 2 or 3 young people were killed. People are afraid to come out and demonstrate like it's done in other countries. How do we get this change in the mentality and orientation of our security forces for them to see that they are not army of occupation? We are working, I hope, working for a better Nigeria. Why do they take us as enemies and they carry live ammunition to confront? That's why people hide in their closets. People are afraid to die, and I don't blame them. So how do we get that? There's been police reform, but the point is, how do we I say finally, let me say finally, how do we bring about a lowering of the cost of governance? Because if there's not so much attraction, money, people will not, it won't be a matter of do or die. We used to have in those days, those of us who remember in the 60s, those legislators were part-time. They had their regular jobs, and that they were teachers or lawyers or some other profession. And they only came for meetings to pass bills or discuss some national issues. They got sitting allowances, and they went back to their professions. But now this is a profession now, to be a politician. But how do you change it when the majority of those who are to change the bill are benefiting? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shehu, I know you have like 3 questions, but actually you have 12 because each one had like a part 1, part 2, and part 3. So I'm going to add just one more from the YouTube viewers to that because that's the last set of questions, if that's okay with you. And this is from Mr. Alex Ajibade. Do you think it shall be easy for a third force like Labour to get credible ministers in place without compromising standard with the major parties in the Federal House? So that's the question from the YouTube viewer. If you can add that to your list of questions that you would address. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks so much. I will take the questions and I'll be quick. First question is about tracking bills. So I put a link in the chat. It's called plaque, and I think one of the things we don't do well enough is a lot of civil society organizations that are doing incredible amounts of work, but our distribution is still very, very limited. And it's because we don't have money to pay for TV adverts, radio adverts. We just have to find the right way to put more of this work in the hands of people. So there's a group called Plaque. And Plaque, if you check plaquebillstrack.org, in some sort of way, they provide all the bills of National Assembly, who is proposing any bill. And if you check their website, Plaque Bills Track, PLACBILLS track.org. And it's owned by an organization based in Abuja. They do all the bills passed, transmitted, assented, the people who are leading all those bills and things like that. So that's number one. Number two question has to do with about how do we about the Labour Party. I'm not a Labour Party enthusiast. Let me leave an open mind. As like I said, I've kept an open mind in this election, so I'm just waiting. Whoever Nigerians choose, I will vote. I'm out of the country, but I'm coming in next week to vote. But whoever Nigerians, and then, to be honest with you, personally, I've not made a decision even up to now who to vote for. But definitely, I'll go around that. And that's unlike me. It's just because maybe I dimension the problems much more differently these days. And I feel that there's a few things I would mention about Labour Party. It's good we're having a top force. It's an improvement. But it won't come perfectly. Let's be very honest with ourselves. It's not going to be easy for anybody to wake up 8 months to an election and to put himself in a new party and win. It's not an easy feat in any way. So even if it happens, it's a miracle. And I don't think I'm not. So we just have to say that, okay, we have had APC and PDP. Let's try something else. If it happens, yes. If it doesn't, Nigerians will take the lessons and take the adjustments and just continue to move forward. At the end of the day, it's democracy. It's tyranny of the majority. It's just what it is at the end of the day. We would take whatever we get. So, but there will be no perfect systems. Democracy is a continuous negotiation, is a continuous give and take and adjustments, and until we get where we want to be. So let's leave that one at that. But Seun Kuti said something recently. There was this fracas between Seun Kuti and P Square. He said something, even though a lot of people might disagree with him because we're in a time where emotions are very charged. He mentioned about building the party ground up. I think even irrespective of where Mr. Obi lands this election, I hope you'll be committed to building a party ground up. Because there is no way out of transformative work if it's going to be only the president. Even if we believe that it represents a new order, or if a lot of people believe it represents a new order, that new order must permeate into National Assembly, into this governorship officers being offered, into state assembly members being offered, who are willing to do the work. There's a difference between somebody wakes up and says, I want to run for office. It's not like that. Politics is a product of elite consensus. People in your local community must look at you and say, from an elite perspective, you would think you should represent us. So people just don't wake up 3 months to election and if you do all of that, people just see you like you're just one out of them. So, I mean, that's a politics 101 class. I don't think I'm educated enough to advise people. Another thing is to publicize. How do we do more to publicize? What I mentioned, that we'll do much more post-election. We have a huge strategy for budget for post-election. We don't see ourselves as an election organization. We see ourselves as a post-election organization. So when the elections are over, we'll come to churches, we'll come to groups like this to talk about our work and to show people the tools that we have that citizens can use to demand accountability. You want to get access to allocations to your state and local government, we have that. You want to have a place where you can track bills, there's available for that. You want to have a place where you can track public projects, there's BudgIT, there's connected development. You want to know contact of lawmakers, EIE Nigeria has Shine Your Hype solution. So there's a buffet of civic tech products that we can use to improve our demand for accountability. We just must be connected across that. A question about when we ask and they don't answer, what do we do? It fits into the culture. A culture that we have to reset that. I'm the Oga, I paid for your votes, I lobbied for this vote, I've won, and I'm no longer accountable to you. But public office is as if you are in a room and you have a key. And you give a key to your child, and you say, open that door for me. And if the key belongs to you, you only handed over the key to your son or your daughter to open the door. Now, if the daughter walks 10 steps and you say, please bring back my key, because the key belongs to you, the child has an obligation to bring the key back to you. But what we have in Nigeria is that once you hand over the key, they believe that they own the key. The person that has the authority believes that he has power. That's the dynamic that we have to engage. We have to keep putting pressure. Like I said, we need more voices, more unusual voices to speak. We need media. Media has been speaking. Civil society has been speaking. We need churches and mosques, everyday citizens, the business community. We need different people also to talk. Artisans, market women, different people. So that when the multitude of multiple voices speak on issues, it begins to change the paradigm of political leaders understand accountability is critical. Because if power does not belong to a person, power belongs to people. So it's a multiple of diverse voices that we can really be able to shake things significantly. Recalling legislators. Yep, that's a big problem. It's a constitutional issue. It's really, really difficult. And I think a lot of people don't want it to be frivolous. That's why it's a bit difficult to recall National Assembly members as much as possible. But we can only keep trying. I really wish we make an example of somebody soon, but it looks like for you to go through that process is hard. Maybe it's something we can put forward in constitutional review. The reality is that there are many issues in Nigeria. Every single person can be a single issue advocate. So I can imagine that somebody in this group will be an advocate of let us simplify the record of legislators and is able to follow that through. Same way we are focused on public budgeting. We can actually do it. And I think final is resetting police culture. That's a culture. Police, wherever you see as a police, see as an off-field official, you see as a military, it's because the cultural system. And that's why I talk about laws and culture. You can write it in the law. But if it's not put in the culture, and when you want to reset a culture, you have to change the entire system of personnel that is involved and also revise the incentive structure. Most of us, we also lead change management in organization. Sometimes when you're trying to change people and change, and you write all the laws and you say all the things, people will not change. But when you bring a new set of people in a new culture, in a new paradigm, and you tell them this is how you get rewarded and this is how you get punished, it's what has to change. That's the outcome around our political system. We need an upturn of the entire system. If it's the same people that we are packing in and different packages are APC, ACN, CPC, PDP, Labour Party, and we don't reset a new set of people with a new orientation into those spaces, it won't change much. That's my own position. And cost of governance, yes. Cost of governance is a fixture of accountability. Is it right for a state governor to say, I'm going to Abuja and I charter a private jet? How sensible is that? Or I go with 20 or 30 people. How sensible is that? Or the governor is coming to, or you build a project for $1 billion and like Governor Wike, he construct a bridge and every 2 to 3 hours is on live TV paying for an enormous amount of time, maybe to taunt his enemies, or just to stroke his ego, and he's spending so much money to commission the project. You build the road, you build the road. Do you even need to cut the rib? People see who has done the work, but that's what we have in Nigeria. It's just our government has become some form of entertainment. We've rounded it all around Owambe. And that's why even our political campaigns is like Owambe. People wear different clothes, they are shouting, they are doing that. Political campaign, people should sit in a campaign hall and a town hall meeting and have questions like a town hall meeting, but ours is more of like, Ankara and different flags and all that. It's who we are as a culture. So those things have to change. And it takes a while that people just demanding that there must be accountability as much as possible. Finally, do you think it will be easy to get Labour to get the right kind of person? I think they will. I think Labour wins, and if the leader that they have has a clear kind of vision, for the kind of country he wants, I think they will get the kind of leadership they want. I think they will. Nigeria is not a short supply of quality people across all races, across all spaces. People who are even ethically minded to change things. Nigeria is not a short supply. So if it's committed to find people who truly want to serve, because public service should be about self-actualization and about having a sense of legacy. Self-actualization means I'm not there for my money. I believe this is my opportunity to serve. I get it, I carry with a lot of humility, and as much as possible, I believe that I must leave a positive legacy here. But if it's a vehicle for accumulation, and then that's when we'll never ever, get the kind of right of public, the kind of society that we truly want. Thank you so much. It's been an honor being here today, and I really, really enjoyed it. The questions are robust, the chat has been great, and thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to hand over back to Mr. President. He has the final word. Thank you so much. We would definitely bring you back post-election because you have quite a few initiatives that we are also interested in collaborating with you on. So post-election, we would probably speak to you and have you back on. Thank you for your time here.
Jim,
Thank you, sir.
thank you for the work that you are doing, and thank you for your eloquence and your understanding of the issues. My only quarrel with you is that you say my politicians are Owambe masters. So I'm going to tell them that Shehu thinks people are all Owambe masters, doing Agbada all over the place and everything. But honestly, I agree with you. We seem to have everything upside down. That last point you made about commissioning of road, you build the road, you build the road. Why cut the ribbon? I'm not sure I've ever heard that one road was built in London. Even Heathrow, I'm not sure they commissioned Terminal 5 after they finished building it. They just started using the terminal. But there was a governor in Nigeria, southern Nigeria. He built one road and he spent the whole day from 7 a.m. to like 4 p.m. live television, opening the road. Deployment of SSS, police, soldiers, special guests of honor, obas, chiefs, the half of the civil service, they were all there by this road that this man had finally built. And they were there till 4 p.m., maybe even later, from morning. And then he had a host governor, host somebody from somewhere as his guest of honor who were there making speeches, dancing over just one road. Meanwhile, a friend of mine jackpot from my office or from my firm, one of the businesses I chair. And when he got there, he says that this place is different. He says there are no more roads to build. All the roads, all the roads have been built. All the water has been supplied. You know, for the first time in the history of Nigeria, there's no money. I've never had it before in my life where I didn't even have some change in the pocket. We've had many currency changes before, but I never experienced this one before. So I don't know. My big challenge is, how do we really solve this problem? You know, it's just as though every time you get a new set of politicians in the saddle, they go back to the old ways. There's not enough gravitas to motivate the people, to let them rise up, to let them know what their rights are, to let them defend themselves. It looks almost difficult to surmount. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that as your final words, and then we close.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir, and thanks so much for the opportunity. I think surmounting is our involvement, our participation. We must be active citizens. We must have an heightened interest in the issues of Nigeria. It can be election cycle. The election cycle is even more of theatrics than substance. You know, we have to be involved in the entire cycle of the electoral process, because that's what is democracy. Elections are not democracy. Democracy is about accountability and being able to, for the rights of minorities and the voice of the majority, both must be protected. So for me, I think as people, we must be involved. Involved as simple as writing a letter to a National Assembly member and letting them know that I'm not excited, I'm not happy with you about your position on this situation. And it's not hard. It could not cost us a 15 or 5,000 naira to dispatch a letter to him in National Assembly or maybe his constituency office. Involved to tell the governor that this road is bad, or the local government chairman, this road is bad, and I'm writing you a letter. And even if you don't get a response, it's fine. It's just that somebody must know that someone is watching and someone is paying attention. So that involvement that transits just because, and I know we are very busy people, we have a whole lot to be able to fix in our lives, but we also must understand that how democracy is shaped is about us tending it, managing it, being involved. And when it's time, we are involved in also building a replacement political elite quietly. Because like I said, for in nutshell, it's just normal nature. Whoever is in power today or whoever thinks is in power today, providence, life, death, whatever is going to sweep them away. Who is going to be the replacement to that culture? And it seems that we just keep getting worse and worse because the system actually attracts somehow the worst of us. Because how many of us are willing, comfortably able to throw away 10 billion naira to say you are running for maybe a state house or a governorship or maybe a 50 billion naira if you're running for presidency. I mean, there are few people who could be able to willing to take that size of risk, and it's just because the system has become heavily monetized to not to attract people who have honest intentions. But we have intelligence to build a system that transits that. Because we have seen situations where people even have money and they still don't win in Nigeria. So very, very important is that we also have to invest in the long work of building a replacement political elite. But right now, in the short term, let's be involved. Let's hold public officers hold accountable. Let's support the work of civic organizations, do much more so. And let's just challenge the system once in a while and bring it into reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think one of the things your organization should think of doing, or even perhaps our organization, is to have like a public orientation unit or a public orientation department that really, really whips up the public and educates the public and encourages them and tells them that get involved. Maybe we should register it and call it Get Involved, and have a strategy of really educating Nigerians and lifting them up and letting them understand what they stand to benefit by getting involved in politics and leadership and choice of leadership, and educating them as to how to choose a good from a bad leader and what they should watch out from their leaders and how to hold leaders accountable for what it is. I think we should think of that and drive it aggressively. Okay? So get involved. God bless you. Have a good thing. Regards to the family, and I hope we get to meet soon.
Yes, sir. I hope so too. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone. My best wishes to everyone. And please.
Thank you so much.
Vote. Very, very important. Thanks.
Yes, everybody, please go out and vote. Those who are able to vote, those who are in the diaspora, well, we'll be praying God that next time you'll be able to vote. But you go and motivate your people and encourage them to vote. We have only 9 days to go, at least for the presidential and the senatorial. So let's get in there. Go and sharpen your PVC and go and vote and get involved. God bless you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Shade, thank you very much. Thank you. God bless you. Truly. God bless you, Shade. Truly appreciate. Olabambo, thank you very much. Thank you. God bless you. Uncle Ralph, God bless you. Mrs. Abiona, Ojo, Odumo, Speedy Gonzalez Abiona. God bless you. Francis, Uncle, Auntie, thank you very much. Auntie BC, thank you so much. It was great to see you on Tuesday. Prof, my landlord, thank you so much. Good to see you, Professor Dosimieti. Thank you for coming. Adeswa, Bruno, Osi, Biola, Margaret, Ogejo. How are you, Margaret? I hope all is well. I hope home is well. I hope you are not missing Mama too much. We should try and talk soon. Daniel Bassi, thank you. Aitwas, thank you. We'll try and see you soon. Fumi, Ajayi Tomori, my dear sister, thank you so much. God bless you all. Thank you for coming. Dr. George Ndubuisi, thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you. Akinleke Olunoyo Foundation, thank you very much, Ayobami. Thank you for being here. God bless you all. Have a nice weekend, and God be with you. Absolutely.